or up, whichever you prefer, depending on your perspective. So what do you got there, Nicole?
She never remembers anything.
She never remembers anything. Cool. What's the unspecified verb?
Me?
Remember.
Remembers.
Class. So is remembers unspecified?
Well, it is in a sense, though.
Aren't they all? So yeah, so it is, because it's also not VAK.
It's not something that's worth challenging.
Yeah, you know,
Right?
right. I would say. Good. What do you got there?
They all come from chaotic backgrounds. I'm not
They
sure.
all come from that. Yeah, sure, why not? Good. Next. Who's next?
She always thinks I'm always going to be late.
She always thinks I'm always going to be late. What's the unspecified verb?
Thanks. Yeah.
It's one.
And B.
And B. Yeah.
He never comprehends what I'm trying to tell him.
He never comprehends what I'm trying to tell him. Good. All right.
He is always taking a class because he thinks he is dumb.
Good.
I was trying to think of a positive one.
You got Jen.
I never understood why she disliked me.
Who haven't we heard from? Okay, what's your?
Americans never plan for that.
Never?
Oh.
Americans never planned for that. That's
I'm surprised.
unspecified. Good. Good. Excellent.
Everybody thinks I went to the bathroom.
Everybody thinks you always are going to the bathroom.
Yeah, it's
Everybody.
better, even more universal.
Universal, everybody, no?
Yeah.
Everybody.
I was just saying it was even better because there's also always going to the bathroom stuck in another universal.
When I strategically placed the toilet paper on my shoe.
Okay, so what if I used a word like, she is always on me about our relationship? What were you thinking?
She's not that shoe's always on me.
Dot. Nice visual.
So, is there a universal there?
Always.
Is there an unspecified referential index?
Yes, she.
Is there an unspecified verb? Obviously. What else is there? What
Depends on
else?
where you cut off the sentence.
Even if I don't cut out the sentence. What is that last one though, when I say about our relationship? What kind of meta model violation is that?
Nominalization.
It's a nominalization. Good guess, ladies and gentlemen. Read the list. What's a nominalization?
Process turned into an event.
Yeah, it's a process turned into an event or a thing, right? People use relationship as a thing, the word relationship as a thing. This is my relationship, this is our relationship. And yet it is what? It's a process. You're in the process of relating to another human being. We're relating with each other, we're talking with each other, we're doing these things together. You know, it's a living, ongoing thing. So it's useful when you talk to somebody who says, oh, I need to work on my relationship. It's like, well, how is it that you're relating? You know, to change their process, this thing that they've turned into a thing, to turn it back into what it ought to be, which is a process. I'm suffering from a terrible depression. What's that? That's an analyzation, right? Depression, what's that mean? Here's a good test for, a classic test for analyzation. If you can put it into a wheelbarrow, it's a thing. Like I can put this into a wheelbarrow, it's a thing. And I put a relationship into a wheelbarrow. And I put a depression into a wheelbarrow. I might go over a depression as I'm pushing my wheelbarrow, but can you put a depression in there? So what would you ask a person if you wanted to denominalize their statement of suffering from a terrible depression?
What is the first depression?
What are you depressed about? Or what are you acting depressed about?
Does it fit in the wheel?
You just-
What is the test?
What are you depressed
I don't remember.
How exactly was taking your depression?
So I wouldn't ask what you're depressed about, because then the person's gonna answer the question and get depressed.
Maybe.
But what does that consider, what does that feel like, look like, if you would maybe break it down?
You might do that too. Any number of ways of doing what we're talking about, which is simply to denominalize the situation. What are you acting depressed about is a great way to ask the question.
How are you doing that?
How are you doing that? When you ask the question, what are you acting depressed about, what does it also do?
That's
It says that they're doing this behavior, oh, you're being depressed, but they are not depressed. Remember the old, I don't know if you do, I don't know if you're aware of this or not. There's this admittedly less than stellarly accurate idea that we have beliefs in certain hierarchy, called hierarchy beliefs, at the top of which is beliefs we have about our identity. The second one would be beliefs about values and things like that. Third would be our capabilities, what I'm capable of in life, spellings. Fourth is behaviors. And fifth at the bottom is beliefs we have about environment, what's our surrounding, where we are when we're doing certain things. So if I say, I'm acting depressed, then it's what? It's a behavior. Who I am, I'm a person. I'm a free individual. That's who I am. What I'm doing is I'm acting depressed. I'm feeling depressed. I'm behaving in a certain way. Right? If I say I am depressed, then what's it doing? It's taking it all the way up to this identity level that isn't all that healthy. Because then it tends to become more like learned helplessness, pervasive, personal, and permanent. This is who I am. Can't change that. Of course you can, but people often think, oh, yeah, that's just who I am. Right? You've heard that before, haven't you? People say shit like that. Oh, it's just who I am.
Mm-hmm.
As if, that's all you get, that's all you can do. So I find this really useful. People argue that it's not really logical, it's not really, these levels are not really, blah, blah, blah. And that's they very good points, very good points. Yet I find it quite useful, especially for this application. Separating the person from the behavior. Person from the behavior. So a nominalization, great thing to be watchful for, because people use them all the time. We do, people use them all the time, nominalizations, and it's really useful to be able to hear them, challenge them, and get back to the behavior rather than the thing, the process rather than the event. Okay? Cool. So what I'd like you to start thinking about right now is what are some examples of nominalizations that you've heard? What's a nominalization that you're aware of? Because you know these things. I want you to just.
Well, I am depressed is normalization.
Say
I am depressed.
I am depressed. I am depressed. Is that a normalization?
Well, linguistically it's not, but
Linguistically, it's not, absolutely.
it's
Very often, nominalizations have this. T-I-O-N-S, at the end. Right, yeah, or this type of thing, like relationship. They've got endings that are pretty common.
Unlike phonetics that you cannot spell phonetically, nominalization is nominalization.
Nominalization is a nominalization, yeah.
Competence, would that be one?
Competence, yeah. Because you have capability, the ability to do things, I have competence. Yeah. It's interesting, when you use a lot of nominalizations, you sound smart. You know, so some people who try to sound smart, you hear them talk and they're like laying nominalization after nominalization after nominalization after nominalization. What's important to you in life? Let me just ask you a question on the side. What's important to you in life? What's something that's important to you in life?
Honesty.
Honesty. Nominalization. Values tend to be nominalizations. Honesty. I value honesty.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of honesty. I've got a whole heap of honesty here in my wheelbarrow. Right? Values. Remember this thing I just wrote, the second thing down there is values? Values tend to be what? Nominalizations. We've taken a process and turned it into a thing and said that's a valuable thing. Love. Right? I've got lots of love in my life. See it? You're my wheelbarrow. Integrity. Loyalty. Right? Okay. So, please, now, doing what you did before, I'd like you to write a sentence using all four of these things here. Actually, let's stop and look at lack of reference.